Hey, this is Captain Paul Brawley with Fish Finder Guide Service. Welcome to this week's edition of Texas Fishing Tips. So, the tide has fallen out. We are working on coming up on a full moon. We're going to have bright skies. There's been very little cloud action. So, the bite is actually a little before daylight into the first hour or 30 minutes of light, and then there's a little lull, and then the bite picks up again around 9 o'clock in the morning. So we're going to start out here. Once again, we're going to keep beating this horse, starting at about right here, all the way around to over here on the east drop of King Ranch shoreline, which would be not the drop, not the drop of the actual shoreline, but the east side of the gut. So this darker water or the lighter water out in here that you're seeing, that's the natural gut. It runs the whole way. It's probably, I don't know, 15 miles long there, and it is full of speckled trout. We have been fishing, still using croakers. The croakers are working well. Some piggy perch are starting to show up at bait stands. So also the piggy perch are working very well. If you do end up getting piggies, you want to fish a little bit back here on the flat, the first 100 yards of it. And the croakers have been working better out off the drop, all out in here off this drop. It seems to be working real well with the croakers. I have been starting a little bit back, maybe 75 yards back on the flat, and I'll give myself a couple of stops on the way out. And actually, the other day I went pretty far out, almost into the middle of the gut, and I was still catching the trout. So that's something you can try. We're still using a number 7 Kel hook. We're free lining the croakers. If you get piggies, you probably want to scale back to a number 5 Kel hook. You're still free lining those. I would not work them as hard as you're working the croaker, because the croaker need to be worked pretty hard for the bites, and if you work the piggies that hard, you'll probably just kill them. Back here, if it's the wind's blowing, back here on these big flats, this big flat and this big flat here are still producing some redfish. It's very, very long drifts across here, 45-minute drifts. I prefer using gold spoons, soft plastics with paddle tails, just any type of action lure, not like a dart tail. You want something that's making the vibration in the water that has some action. Kind of just reeling them, pausing, reeling, pausing, and waiting for those redfish bites. Those drifts through here are quite long. You're looking at, 45-minute drifts probably, and you're looking at maybe 1, maybe 2 redfish bites. But the reds have been in those flats, so you're just going to kind of just make those drifts through there, on the southeast wind. That's mainly what you're going to have now. It is starting out most mornings with almost a due south, even a hair of southwest to it, but by about 10 a.m. it's switching to southeast. So that whole area there seems to be pretty good and pretty full of fish, and you should do pretty well on all that. Okay, next we're going to talk about the area kind of around Peta Island here. All of this area. Call it tropics, call it Peta Island, call it whatever you like. That area there is producing trout early and some redfish scattered. The tide's pretty low. The reds are going to be in this zone here. Not so much back out here on Sulphur, but more or less in that zone. And all the trout are going to be where this natural gut runs through here, and or behind Peta, between Peta and the shoreline, all in that area there. For the trout, we're still using croakers and or piggies if you can get them. We are free lining them using number 7 Kel hooks on the croakers, number 5 Kel hooks on the piggies. We're still using soft plastics and or piggies in this area here, and all the mini sand holes that are there. We're using some soft plastic. We're using some piggies in there on the sand holes and catching the redfish and scattered trout. But that whole area right there can produce reds, and that further out area, this can produce pretty nice trout and pretty good limits to fill up your boxes. That whole area there will have a lot of boat traffic on Saturdays and Sundays. So this, I like to fish more in the middle of the week. Both this areas right in there. This area back in here, it can be used with lures, just long drifts across. The drifts are probably 20 minutes through there until you get to the natural. You'll see the gut. The water will be off-colored in this area. So you're going to be coming from the end of these islands to that off-colored water, and you're going to be looking for the reds in there. You can use soft plastics, use gold spoons, and or power pull down on those potholes and throw the piggies and try to get your reds in there. If you're throwing the piggies, you're going to pick up some trout in those shallower pockets, especially early. All right, so in the Laguna, on the south side of the causeway, we're going to talk about one more area with the lower tides. Actually, I'm going to talk about a couple of places. But the triangle, which I know you guys have heard me refer to the triangle, which is this area right in here. Any of those drops that are close to those channels, so right off of the channels, there's several channels there. There's the one that the Humble runs here, comes back. There's a channel that runs back. There's another channel through the middle of this. There's all these finger channels. Anywhere off of these channels, and I mean pretty close to them, 20, 25 yards off the channels, you can go on the left or the right side. I prefer to get on the upwind side and throw back towards the channel, but still be on the edge of the channel. All of those have been holding redfish and trout and a few black drum. If you're going to fish the black drum, you're probably going to have to use popping corks through this whole area. I like the 4 Horsemen corks, the new ones with the titanium wire. I know I'm beating a dead horse, but man, they are really working well, and the wire is not bending. You might need live shrimp and to get the drums in those areas, but all of the edges of those channels anywhere around this area have been holding redfish and trout. I would prefer to use piggy perch this far north, but if you have to use croakers, croakers are working. They're not working as well for the reds, but they are working very well for they're working very well for the trout. But the piggies are what the reds are going to really want. You could even try some of more, around the main Humble or around this long channel. Any of those channels, right off the edges of those channels with that low tide, seems to be having the main activity for the reds and trout. Keep in mind that the old bridge pylons run across a laguna right here and can be very dangerous. So you guys want to make sure that you know where those are and have those marked on your GPS. That is a dangerous area. These little pockets up in here, right here, and right in here have also been holding redfish and speckled trout. So you guys want to try some croakers or some piggies all through there. Still using the number 7 cal hooks on the croakers, number 5s on the piggies. The other area I wanted to talk about would be the west drop of the Intercoastal. So the west drop is this side of the Intercoastal. You can set your trolling motor on auto lock, and you can go down the edge with that low tide. You can go down the edge of the Intercoastal, and it has actually quite a few trout in it right now. So you're going to be, and you may pick up a flounder on the edge of the Intercoastal. So up and down the west edge of the Intercoastal, and that's actually the entire way, all the way through here and back. When it gets into this wide open stuff, it's pretty much anybody's a game. But where it has land on either side, or this hard drop from the big flat, or the hard drop from down here on Sulphur, you would know that edge, the channel comes up and it goes to a very shallow edge right here. You can see the sand right there, and it works that way all the way back down towards Bird Island. Anyway, that west side, if you get on your spot lock on your trolling motor and you get out, 20, 30 yards out in the channel, and you're throwing back towards the edge, maybe 15 yards out in the channel, maybe that's too far, maybe 20 yards, where you're 60 feet off the channel and you're throwing back in there, you would actually pick up some pretty good trout right on that edge. Be aware there's probably a current going one way or the other, so you have to throw your bait kind of up current and let it come back down. Pick your bait back up and throw again. But you should be able to catch some trout, some flounder, and possibly some reds on the edge of the Intercoastal right now with the tide being as low as it is. Anyway, you guys take care, catch a bunch of fish, and we'll see you on next edition.